Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio, broadcast from the law offices of Polsinelli in Washington, D.C. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-hosts, Phil Fagan, Lindsay Newman, Mark Petrie, and Michael Gaba from the law firm of Polsinelli. And we have a great lineup of guests for you on our show today, including Laura Mahoney, Corporate Counsel of RiskLens, followed by Larry Samuelson, Senior Vice President and General Counsel, CVent, Kevin McCoy, General Counsel of C2 Essentials, and Brandon Fitzgerald, AGC and Assistant Secretary of UNCF. Let's get to know our first guest, Laura Mahoney, Corporate Counsel of RiskLens. Laura, what is RiskLens?
We're a cyber risk quantification software.
Mm-hmm. How large or how small is the organization?
About 75 employees.
And where are you from originally?
Colorado and then Connecticut.
Why Colorado and then then Connecticut?
My father passed away when I was younger when we lived in Colorado, and my mom's family was in Connecticut.
Ooh, how young were you when your dad passed away?
2 years old.
2 years old. And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I had one then and then an additional 4.
Uh-huh. So you moved from Colorado to Connecticut because your dad passed when you were 2 with a younger brother. Okay. So what was going on in the family dynamic at that point in time? What was happening?
It was just a little bit chaotic. We were just trying to figure out the transition to Connecticut. And then when I was in 3rd grade, my mom actually got remarried to my stepdad, who had a son who was about my age. And so then they grew the family more from there. And
What was your relationship with your brother?
He was actually severely special needs, so it was much more that of a caretaker than a typical brother-sister relationship.
What do you mean?
He couldn't eat or speak, and so I fed him through a G-tube, and we used sign language to communicate and helped him get around.
How young were you when you were doing this?
Probably from 3 onwards until he passed away when I was in college.
What was your brother's first name?
Edward.
What did Edward teach you about being the corporate counsel of RiskLens?
To treat everyone equally.
What are you talking about?
I think a lot of people say special needs people don't have as much judgment in them, and he loved everybody equally. He was friendly to everybody, and I try and keep the same kind of lens on me with everybody that I work with and everyone I communicate with.
Mm-hmm. So how young were you when you started making money?
12.
And what were you doing?
Bussing tables at a restaurant.
Whose idea was it to get this job?
It was mine.
Why?
To make money and to probably get out of the house a little bit and just take on a new challenge.
Mm-hmm. So what did you do different than all the other kids that took this job bussing tables?
I was a little bit younger than them and was spending more time bossing them around and organizing everyone.
Well, you actually told me earlier that you were involved with helping schedule them as opposed to bossing them around. And did somebody ask you to prepare the schedule, or did you sort of take that on yourself?
No, I took it on myself.
So you were working bussing tables, and you must have surprised the owner or the manager of the restaurant taking this responsibility.
Yeah, I think I did.
Uh-huh. And how long did you continue in that gig?
I was probably there for a year or 2 and then just continued on in the restaurant business up in the Cape until I went to college.
So your nature is to, it's pretty responsible. I mean, your nature is to take on responsibility and just take it on, just get it done.
Yes, correct.
Uh-huh. All right, Philip.
Yeah, we were talking earlier. Can you tell us a little bit about how you connected with your stepdad when he came into your life?
Sure. So we actually connected through books that he read. I was an avid reader, but wanted to be able to talk to him about things too. And so I went into his library and took a bunch of John Grisham books and got really into John Grisham. And that's how we bonded, and that ended up making me want to go to law school.
Did you think you were going to be like one of the lawyers in the Grisham books?
I definitely did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Michael?
Laura, how do you feel your upbringing, what you described as a chaotic environment, influenced your decision to join a startup?
I think just the unpredictability of it every day and kind of needing to be a little bit of everything, fill a bunch of roles, and just kind of keep things moving towards the ultimate goal, whether it's at home or at the company. Just it's kind of my sweet spot.
Larry?
Yeah, Laura, I want to go back to the busing tables. How do you think that is like being corporate counsel at a startup?
I think you just have to be willing to do anything. If that's fix the printer, you fix the printer. If that's, pour out coffee mugs, you do that too. So
you do that as the corporate counsel of RiskLens?
My colleague Jason actually does it more than me, but we both have to deal with the IT, HR, everything else that any vacuum that needs to be filled really at the company.
So you have a pretty close working relationship with the CEO and the CFO and the COO. I mean, it sounds like you're all one team together.
Yes, very much.
It sounds like it's a relationship you sort of have with your mom, and you really just take responsibility.
Correct.
Lindsay?
What made you determine that you wanted to find this connection with your stepfather after having a fairly, you described at times, contentious relationship?
I think it was just really important to me to see my family become cohesive, and I respected him for taking on as much as he did with my brother and I and my mom, who was recently widowed, and they were starting a family together, and so that was through books and a like interest was just
how's that personality trait of yours of wanting to see everybody together? How's that playing out in terms of building this business called RiskLens?
I mean, just like any startup, you have to all be moving towards the same goal, and you're all moving really quickly. But there's definitely a team attitude.
Am I drawing a connection there that's not true? I mean, is that
no? Absolutely, it is.
What? Tell me more about that. What do you mean?
All the teams have to work together, and in my position, I have the opportunity to support every team in the company, and also just influence where we go. And I think it's really important to me to be able to be on the business side of things, but then also have an impact in our culture and the morale of the company and what we want to be at the next phase.
And you're the corporate counsel. It sounds like you've got your hands in everything, the culture of the organization. Normally you don't hear that kind of stuff. How about that? Mark, what are you thinking?
Laura, what attracted you to RiskLens in the infosec industry?
My first job before I went to law school and while I was in law school was at a startup company in Boston called Carbonite, and I just fell in love with the tech space and the startup environment, and so that's what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be the GC of a tech company, so that's what I did.
How did you know and why did you know? Tell me more about how you knew you wanted to be the GC of a tech company. Tell me more about that.
Again, just comes back to the kind of different, everyday, chaotic environment. I just really enjoyed it, and you're kind of the quarterback of all the different business teams, and you can have a big impact. So your middle name is responsibility, isn't it? It's like taking a look at everything all the time and making sure it's making sure stuff doesn't go wrong as the general counsel, as well as making sure stuff goes right. Yes, definitely.
What's the best part of your day?
The atmosphere at work, just the energy that we have as a team.
Atmosphere, energy, and you happen to be the corp. What do you mean the atmosphere and the energy? What are you talking about?
We just have a good work culture, and everybody respects each other. We try to instill that we have a top-down attitude of, everyone gets treated with integrity and dignity, and it works. And
you're an attorney inside the corporation. You're the corporate counsel, and you're helping set the tone of the organization?
I think anybody can if they want to.
Wow. I never realized corporate counsel did that. Who's got the next question, Philip?
Yeah. Where does the risk-taking part of your career come? So you didn't go the traditional route of being in a law firm, and most startups are risky. So where's that come from?
I don't know.
I think maybe it has to do with your organizing chaos as a kid.
Yeah, probably.
Your nature is to go jump in and just go fix stuff. I mean, you took on the relationship with your brother, who really needed your help. It's a very and then also you took the job. I mean, your nature is just to jump in and try to make things better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I just enjoy not having things be predictable every day and
making order out of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
When do you lose interest?
I don't know. We'll see.
When it's organized. And do you have to work weekends? You ever work weekends?
Yeah, we do often.
You get paid extra for doing that?
No, we're salaried.
Well, why do you bother doing it then?
Somebody's got to do it, and it's at the end of the day, it all stops with me. So I want to have my job be done well.
But you're not the CEO. What do you mean it all stops with you?
Everything legal does.
You're taking responsibility again. What's the website address of this organization known as RiskLens?
RiskLens.com, RiskLens.com.
Let me have that one more time.
RiskLens.com, RiskLens.
RiskLens. We've been speaking with Laura Mahoney, Corporate Counsel of RiskLens here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, it's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, we will be back in a moment, right after this business spotlight. Want help building your business with help from this show's CEOs? Our CEOs can help you uncover more opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that. They've succeeded in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars, and some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. The same CEOs you've heard on this show for 10 years may be willing to help you build your business, uncover new opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that, succeeding in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars. And some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio, and I'd like to introduce Larry Samuelson, who's Senior Vice President and General Counsel of an organization known as CVent. Larry, what is CVent?
CVent is a B2B software solution for corporate event planners and marketers to plan their events, venue selection, and on-site solutions.
How large or how small is this organization?
We've got over 4,000 employees worldwide and over $500 million in revenues.
And where are you from originally?
I grew up in Orange County, California.
And how many brothers and sisters?
I have one younger sister.
One younger sister. All right. And what kind of sports did you play as a kid?
Soccer and baseball, and swam and played water polo in high school.
And baseball, what was your role on the team?
I was the shortstop.
And what was the personality trait you brought to the role of shortstop?
I was a team builder, and I kept the team organized. I loved putting my hand up, telling everybody what out it was and where to position.
And what do you mean you were a team builder? What are you talking about there?
Well, playing Little League when you're 8 and 9 years old, the people out in the field get bored. So, I would do stuff to keep them engaged and make sure that they understood where we were in the game and what their role was. How's that coming through in your role? As it says here, you're the Senior Vice President and General Counsel of this organization known as CVent. I do exactly that. And that, we've got our chief revenue officers and our sales leads, our marketing leads, and, they're subject matter experts. And as the general counsel, the common thread is, A, how to do things legally, but most importantly, how to, keep things organized. I gotcha. I needed to understand that. All right, Philip.
Yeah, I know your dad was a lawyer. Was it your intent to follow in his footsteps?
It was actually my exact opposite. My dad hung his own shingle to be a litigator, and litigators like to argue and they like conflict, and I definitely am the exact opposite.
So in your job today, are you trying to avoid conflict?
No, I wouldn't say it's impossible to avoid conflict, but I try every day to compromise. I really do try to get to win-win solutions.
Can you talk about the family dynamic around the dinner table with your dad being a lawyer when you were growing up?
Yeah, it was a very traditional family. My father would come home from a long day of work, and we were required, my sister and I, to meet him at the garage door and give him a hug as he walked in. After he got changed for dinner, he sort of led the dinner table like a boardroom. So go around the table asking you, what you did at school and what you learned that day and what you could do better tomorrow.
You used the word required. Did you become a rule follower because of that?
I think I was probably a natural-born rule follower, firstborn child, sort of stereotypically. But certainly pleasing my parents was very, very important to me.
Lindsay?
What were the conversations that you guys would have around the dinner table?
Sure. It ranged everything from sort of what happened that day to the far more theoretical. My dad was involved in local politics, and we spent a lot of time talking about both national and global politics.
You'd mentioned that you really liked and enjoyed getting into politics and going door to door. How does someone at your age, was it natural that your dad took you along on all of those visits, or how did that happen?
So, my dad made the introduction, but he didn't have the time to get that involved. And so, being a volunteer and being able to go door to door and advocating on for people who I believed, had the right thoughts about where this country should go was very, very important.
How do you take those advocacy skills into your role today?
Every day. So, first, I think you have to believe in who you're advocating for. So I know there are a lot of lawyers out there who could, plays devil's advocate and just argue. It's not really that type of person. I need to believe what I'm advocating on behalf. And so, understanding where CVent wants to go and how they want to get there is very important.
It sounds to me like you're part strategy as opposed to 100% attorney.
It definitely is part strategy. And, when we sit together with a team, an executive committee, that's what we're talking about.
So I guess that is attorney. I mean, I guess you're playing the roles of senior vice president and corporate counsel, but general counsel, but it sounds to me like, part of that is being strategic, helping understand where the real team is going, the marketing, the finance, everything.
It is. And I think the legal part is, and I've trained my team like this, but the legal part of that is getting to a responsible yes. The yes part, the responsible part of it is the legal side. The yes side is the strategic and the business side.
Michael?
Thank you. Larry, earlier you had mentioned that you were the first GC of CVent and presumably the only one, as if it were really no big deal. Can you identify other firsts in your life that made your GD decision a no-brainer?
Sure.
What else did you start?
Yeah. So in high school, with a couple friends, started the American Red Cross Club, and so that was sort of my first foray into.
How many friends did you start that with?
2 or 3.
And what was your role in that whole group?
Primarily, I was membership director, I think it was the formal title, but really it was just my job to make sure students showed up and volunteered.
How's the membership director showing up nowadays as senior vice president and general counsel?
So, as part of an executive team, we do a lot of recruiting. You don't get to be a company that's over 4,000 employees without doing a tremendous amount of recruiting and selling how good the company that CVent is.
Mm-hmm. Michael, what else are you thinking?
I'm going to pass.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, Larry, how was your relationship like with your sister growing up in your household and at the dinner table?
Yeah, growing up, my sister was definitely my best friend. Didn't grow up with a lot of family. My parents moved out west from the East Coast, so it really was just the 4 of us. And I needed a partner in crime against my parents.
How does that influence your role with CVent?
So funny enough, when I joined CVent 6 years ago, most of the executive team had been there for over 15 years. And it was a family. So it literally was like walking into a family. And having a tight family relationship made it a lot more comfortable and gave me a lot of background on how to build those family relationships. So
you really enjoy a close-knit relationship with your working buddies.
It's paramount. And when I interviewed with our CEO, I told him that the role of general counsel was exactly that, to provide counsel more generally, not specifically. And in order to do that, I needed to know him and get to know him.
Give me that again. What?
So the role of general counsel goes far beyond sort of the 4 corners of the black letter of the law. You have to understand your client. And in order to understand your client, you have to build that relationship. And like any relationships, I do think that, your strongest relationships are in your family, and building those types of bonds are important.
What are you talking about relationships? I read the newspapers, and I understand the businesses sue each other, and the job of an attorney is to go sue people. You're talking about developing relationships?
I am, and I think it fits hand in glove actually with what CVent does. We're building. We don't view ourselves as a vendor, and I don't think our clients view us as a vendor. We're partners in putting on live events and helping make those truly special. And I think the company's able to sell that because of how we treat each other internally.
Interesting, Philip. What else are you thinking?
You also talked about being friendly with the people you work with. You had an election against a friend of yours when you were in college. Can you talk about that?
Sure. That was in my fraternity, ran for president, and obviously it was a small fraternity, only about 35 guys, and I lost by one vote. But actually, it was a tie, right? It was a tie, but I got outvoted because the president got the tiebreaker vote, and I lost. But I was his executive vice president, and it taught me a lot of lessons. One, it's generally okay to lose; you don't have to win all the time. But more importantly, that you still have a role to play, and being quote second actually is a very, very important role.
Well, what time do you start with your emails in the morning? What time do you end with your emails at night?
Yeah, I wake up about 5:45, so check my phone then, and I usually finish work around 10 p.m.
So you're constantly thinking about business, aren't you? With 4,000 employees
I
in
am.
international operations. And are mom and dad aware of what you're doing?
They are.
Are they surprised you ended up like this?
My dad probably is a little surprised.
Why would that be?
My dad always told me that I wasn't the brightest person in the classroom, and but the way to get to the top was through hard work. And so, it's good to see that hard work paid off.
Do you think he's proud of you?
I know he's very proud of me.
Why?
I think he knows how hard I work and how serious I take my job, and a lot of that comes from him. He got up every morning and he worked 6 days a week to run his own shop.
What's the website address of this organization known as CVent?
CVent.com.
It's CVent.com?
That is correct.
And we visit with Larry Samuelson, Senior Vice President and General Counsel of CVent. We will be back in a moment right after this break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. And we'd like to introduce Kevin McCoy, General Counsel of C2 Essentials. Kevin, what is C2 Essentials?
C2 is an outsourced human resources provider. We go to companies that don't have HR services and become their HR department for them.
Interesting. How large or how small is this organization?
We've got about 45 corporate employees and about 3,000 client employees around the country and overseas.
Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Northeast Tennessee in a town called Kingsport.
Northeast Tennessee. How many brothers and sisters?
None that I'm aware.
All right, so you're an only child. And when you were a kid, 8 to 14 years old, what were you up to? What were you doing?
I was going to school. I was playing soccer. I was listening to music.
When you say you were playing soccer, what was your role on the team?
Either left back or left midfielder.
Left back or left midfielder. Philip?
So I assume you're left-footed?
I am not. I am right-footed.
And right-handed as well?
I am indeed.
So talk about the challenge of playing a left position being right-handed.
Well, the challenge was never being able to use my right foot as much as I really would have liked to. But I became adept at using my left foot, and I'm assuming that's why the coach probably left me there.
So that this adeptness, how does that play into what you're doing today?
Today, unfortunately, I don't get to pick or choose my positions. I have to move and be flexible enough to respond to any type of legal situation that the company might face.
Growing up, what did you learn from your mom?
My mom was the primary caretaker. My dad was a doctor and worked a lot, and so being an only child, my mom and I hung out a lot. She taught me how to be very self-sufficient, how to cook and clean and iron my clothes and take care of my cat.
And how does that, again, play into what you're doing today?
I'm in large part a caretaker for the company. I take care of their assets. I take care of their property. I take care of the employees. I help take care of the clients and make sure that everyone is operating in a good space.
Yeah. And by the way, how long did that cat live?
That was the only pet I ever had as a child. The cat lived to be almost 20 years old. I was out of college for years before she finally passed.
You're a pretty good caretaker there. Philip, what else you got?
Your dad, you mentioned he's a doctor. Could you talk about that and when you were growing up?
Sure. He was a family practitioner. He was in a group of doctors, about 20 or 30 doctors in Northeast Tennessee, and he ran a satellite office out in Burgonsville, Tennessee for a number of years.
So what was his reputation in the area?
My dad had a great reputation. As a doctor, he was in a small community. People came to see him all the time, even if they weren't sick. I would say he had a reputation as being sort of a problem solver and an easygoing guy that they could come and talk to and like being around.
And how did that influence you?
I think it demonstrated to me that I had a lot of work to do if I was going to provide and succeed in the way that he had in his life and career.
You had a lot of respect for your dad. You still do, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. He provided a great role model in terms of how to conduct yourself professionally, how to be successful, and the type of work you had to do.
And what did that do to you, how to conduct yourself professionally? What's that mean to you? What are you talking about?
It means you have to be willing to put others first above your own wants and needs a lot of the time.
Do you find yourself doing that as it says you're the general counsel of C2 Essentials?
Almost every day.
What are you talking about?
Everybody else's problems, certainly from a legal nature, take precedence over whatever else is typically going on your day, by and large. So my primary responsibility is to make sure that the company has a great day every day. So
you're not sitting there suing everybody every day. It's like you're looking at everything all the time and making sure everything is moving forward.
Yeah, you're juggling many balls, some of them legal, some of them not.
Are you concerned about the company's reputation like you were your dad's reputation?
Every day. I often check websites and social media accounts and other types of public information to see what's being talked about.
Why do you bother doing that?
Because part of being a successful company today is maintaining a reputation as being successful.
It's fascinating to me how you're concerned about the reputation of the company, but it makes sense. Lindsay?
So when you had disagreements with your parents as an only child, how did you handle them?
I had to learn to advocate for myself. I had no siblings to do it on my behalf, and so anything that I wanted that was different from what my parents wanted, I had to do it myself. And I learned quickly that I had to articulate a very compelling reason in order to get them to change their mind.
Mm-hmm. And is that a skill that you have to use regularly?
Every day. Both at home and at work. Since my wife is also a lawyer.
So you're married. How many?
I am.
You have any kids?
No, just one crazy dog.
So at home, who wears the pants in the family?
Since my wife might hear this eventually, I'm going to say her.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you're serving others. I just wanted to make sure that was coming through. Michael?
Kevin, as an only child, it sounds like your parents were significant influence on your life, but tell me more about that and if there were other people, maybe teachers or friends of yours growing up.
Sure, yeah. Parents obviously were the primary influences in my life. I would say there were probably two others. One was my high school freshman year English teacher, who was also happened to be the coach of the debate team at the time for the high school. And I joined the debate team as a freshman and was active in that all 4 years of high school. The other influential person I would say was the grandfather on my dad's side. He was both a farmer, a teacher, and later a school principal and superintendent. But he also survived the Bataan Death March when he was in the military. And I never remember seeing him relax or take it easy. Generally, he was always either coming home from school, from work, or they ran a farm, they had an orchard, they had cows, they had pigs. He was either up early or out late tending to those. He was always on the go and always doing something active.
So it sounds to me like your grandfather had a lot of different jobs and a lot of stamina and grit. How would you say that impacts your life as general counsel at C2?
I think I certainly picked up some of those same traits. I think you learn to setbacks are not as bad as they really seem, and victories are not as large as they seem, and you learn to soldier on and move on to the next thing and simply get it done, because the list of things to do don't end. They may speed up or slow down occasionally, but they don't end.
Earlier when we were talking about your playing soccer, and the other thing that came out in the green room when we were talking is you told us that the personality you brought to the party on the soccer team was consistency. It sounds to me like that's what you're bringing to the party in terms of the personality trait is with the firm, with the company.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I bring a level of consistency and calmness and level-headedness
to the party,
that I think is valuable as a general counsel.
Mark?
Yeah, well, what's your role and relationship with a lot of C2 clients? Are you taking care of them like what runs in your family blood?
So my primary client are internal C2 employees. Our clients for C2 I do interact with on some basis. My clients internally, I work with them a lot to resolve problems, and then I do get to interact also with C2's business clients to help resolve conflicts that arise there as well sometimes.
Philip, you have another question there?
Yeah, I'm noticing a pattern here. The debate club, you married a lawyer, you were...
which I swore I would never do. Marry a lawyer, that is.
Right, and you were a child arguing with your parents and having to advocate for yourself. Talk about that.
How it ended up that way?
Yeah.
I think... because I love to debate. I love a good political discussion. I love taking sides. I love people that will stand up and take a position and advocate for it. I particularly appreciate people that will stand up and take a position and effectively advocate for it when they don't believe it necessarily. I think that's a really great skill to have, and it's a skill that I enjoy exercising and honing.
Mm-hmm. Kevin, what's the website address for this organization known as C2 Essentials?
The website is c2essentials.com. It's the letter C and the number 2 and then essentials.
Let me have that one more time.
c2essentials.com.
Excellent. We've been speaking with Kevin McCoy, General Counsel of C2 Essentials here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment right after this Business Spotlight. Want help building your business with help from this show's CEOs? Our CEOs can help you uncover more opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that. They've succeeded in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars, and some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. The same CEOs you've heard on the show for 10 years may be willing to help you build your business, uncover new opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that, succeeding in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars. And some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, and we'd like to introduce a gentleman by the name of Brandon Fitzgerald, who's the AGC and Assistant Secretary of an organization known as UNCF. What is UNCF? What are you guys doing?
So UNCF is the nation's preeminent minority education organization. We advocate on the federal level. We also give out scholarships, and we support 37 historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs.
Huh. How large or how small is this organization?
We're approximately 225 people.
And where are you from originally?
Originally Baltimore, Maryland.
And how many brothers and sisters?
I have 2 half-brothers who are about 17 years older, so I grew up as an only child.
And tell us, what makes an only child special? How did that affect your growing up?
So I think there's an additional level of maturity because your primary socialization is with adults, so you learn to stand up for yourself quite early.
All right. What kind of sports were you playing when you were in school?
I was a huge tennis fan and played too much tennis, according to my parents.
Was it singles or doubles or what?
Definitely singles.
And why singles? Why'd you enjoy singles?
I think there's a great, enjoyed the independence, was self-reliant, and there's also a great deal of creativity in playing singles. I think there's also a great deal of creativity in being in-house counsel.
Okie dokie. Philip?
Yeah, what did your parents do?
So my father was a professor at Morgan State University, which is an HBCU. My mother is a primary school teacher.
Mm-hmm. And earlier you told us there was something that your parents and even your extended family instilled in you.
Well, they told me that I could do anything and be anything, including president. Unfortunately, Barack Obama beat me there.
How did you get that message? Did they tell you that directly, or did they sort of like imply it, or how?
Nope, they told me directly. There's my dad also said that you have to be twice as good to get half as much. So they imparted the need to be as excellent as I could be.
And was it just your parents that said this to you, or were there other members of the family?
No, I was extremely fortunate. I had a great extended family. So my maternal grandmother, paternal grandmother, just felt a lot of support and love and nurturing.
So did they all feel this way about you?
I guess in there, if they admitted it, yes.
So you got a lot of support. Well, you got a lot of expectations placed on your shoulders as a kid.
I did, yes.
Did you find that crippling?
No, I think there's certainly a lot of pressure. I was one of very few African-American students at McDonough School where I went. Mm-hmm. But like a lot of things, it made me tougher and just more resilient.
Let's see. Lindsay, what are you thinking?
So as someone who's an only child and played singles in tennis, you probably spent a lot of time in your independence. How did you make friends? Was that difficult for you?
No, it wasn't. I learned a lot from playing singles, a lot of discipline, sort of mental strength. But, playing tennis, you're also part of a team. So, you're playing your match, but then you're also watching your teammates play. You're encouraging them during points. So there is sort of an important team aspect to tennis, even though singles is an individual sport. And then I also played doubles even when I didn't want to. So I had to, there's a lot of learning in that.
Mm-hmm. And who were the friends that you gravitated towards when you were at McDonough?
So McDonough, we sort of were segmented into classes and tracked. And so I was, as I mentioned, one of very few African-American students. So most of my friends, even today, are Asian American.
Mm-hmm. Michael, what are you thinking?
Brandon, we spoke earlier about you getting your undergraduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania and your law degree from UVA. Did your educational experiences influence your decision to become assistant GC at UNCF, and if so, how?
Well, I think they did. I had a wonderful time at UPenn, and I think one of the things that you learn, even as wonderful as the experience was going to school in an environment that's obviously not predominantly black, and there's some challenges with that. And so HBCUs provide a nurturing, warm environment that gives you every bit of the educational quality, but with kind of the nurturing and support that a number of students need.
Mm-hmm. Brandon, what did Mom and Dad go to school for?
So, my dad was a mathematical statistician and taught business administration. But originally, when my parents went to school, the schools were segregated. So my dad went to vocational school and learned to be a tailor. My mom went to secretarial school.
Your dad went to school to be a tailor, and your mom went to secretarial school.
Yes.
But your dad didn't end up being a tailor.
No, he did not. He wound up going to the Air Force, being a merchant marine, and eventually wound up getting his degree and then becoming a professor.
How did all that affect you?
Well, it did tell me that I could do anything, and that excellence is really your ticket to advancement.
What do you mean excellence is the ticket to advancement?
It means being the best at whatever you do, and part of being the best is working incredibly hard.
Yeah, I was going to say, you certainly apply yourself. That's what I picked up from that comment. Is that true?
Yes. There's whether it's tennis or whether it's in-house counsel, there are no shortcuts, and that's something else my parents also taught me.
Well, the good thing about your job is you get to go in at 10 and you get to leave at 3 or 4, right?
No, I wish I could say that. The job is 24/7. There's almost never a time I'm not looking at my phone or checking emails.
And where's that coming from? Your dad went to school for a tailor but didn't want to be a tailor, and it's like he learned about working hard?
Exactly. That's my father always talked about people who didn't want to work every single day, and my father was insulin-dependent diabetic, took incredible care of himself, and so hard work is what I learned from them at a very early age.
What'd you pick up from Mom?
Compassion. She probably wishes I was more compassionate, but my mom and my aunt both have the kindest, most wonderful hearts, and everybody who meets them says that, and they wonder where I came from.
And yeah, but it sounds to me like you're bringing that to work as well, because otherwise you wouldn't be involved with building. Let me ask you a question. This organization of UNCF, what was it in your childhood that's really got your heart with this organization?
Well, UNCF has been around for 75 years. Our 75th anniversary was this year. And, any organization that helps make people's lives better, sends kids to school, provides internships, it is a joy and a privilege to be able to go to work every day and to know that I'm helping to make the world a little bit of a better place.
So this is really spiritually, it really is meaningful to you.
Yes, as while there are many hard days, it's also a labor of love.
What is a labor of love?
Trying to help kids who may have been where I was or where my parents were. Many of the kids that UNCF supports are the first to go to college.
Do you ever hear any of their stories?
I do. In fact, we at our 75th anniversary in Washington, D.C., there was a young man who was a student at UPenn where I went to school, and it was just wonderful to see things come full circle, to see UNCF support him, knowing I was where he was maybe 25 years ago.
So you meet some of these people, huh?
We certainly do.
You certainly do?
Yes.
How does it make you feel?
Wonderful. It makes me feel like the long days and the long hours are really worth it.
And why is that?
Because you can see it in their eyes.
You can see what in their eyes? You
can see the hope and the promise that they'll have better lives. And when they talk about their parents and how their parents feel about what they've done, it comes through. You can see.
Didn't you have an
change.
experience in the Ukraine and in Honduras that seemed a little odd at the time? But tell us about those experiences.
My school had a number of exchange programs, and so one of them was with a school in Odessa, Ukraine.
How young were you?
I was 15 years old when I went to Odessa, Ukraine, which was then the Soviet Union.
And what did you learn from that experience?
Well, I learned that that capitalism isn't all that bad, and it's a lot better than the alternatives, I tell you.
And how about the experience in Honduras?
Again, Honduras was at the time the poorest country in Central America, so I learned some self-reliance. I was with a host family, people I'd never met. I had to make relationships, but I also had to improve my Spanish.
How long were you there for?
I was there for 8 weeks.
So you were there for 8 weeks. You were living in their house?
I was living in their house,
and
yes.
It was a fancy-dancy house?
No, it was not. No, it was. They try to sort of match you and keep you at the same economic level, but it was not fancy-dancy, and I had to get along with people who were very different than me.
Well, you spoke Spanish, didn't you?
I did, and my Spanish was a hell of a lot better than people from California or other places where they're more Spanish speakers.
So what did you learn from that experience?
I learned the ability of communicating with different people and having to put myself in a situation and make the best of it no matter what.
So you chose to go to the Ukraine, and then you chose to go to Honduras, right?
Well, no. Honduras was chosen for me.
But you went.
I did.
Would you have done it again?
I certainly would.
Why?
In addition to improving my language skills, so many people don't appreciate what the U.S. provides, and to go to Honduras to see favelas, to appreciate the economic opportunities here, despite some of the challenges, is something that really puts into stark relief, what we have in the United States.
What's the website address for UNCF?
UNCF.org.
Let me have that one more time.
UNCF.org.
We've been speaking with Brendan Fitzgerald, AGC and Assistant Secretary of UNCF here on Executive Leaders Radio. We've had the opportunity of speaking today with Laura Mahoney, Corporate Counsel of RiskLens, Larry Samuelson, Senior Vice President and General Counsel of CVent, Kevin McCoy, General Counsel of C2 Essentials, and again, most recently, Brandon Fitzgerald, who is the AGC and Assistant Secretary of UNCF here on Executive Leaders Radio. I would like to thank my co-hosts, including Phil Fagan, Lindsay Newman, Mark Petrie, and Michael Gaba, for giving me a hand from the law firm of Paulson, for giving me a hand structuring the questions, hopefully providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.